High-level competition in anything is all about fundamentals. Your fundamentals define you, whether that's physical or mental understanding of your competition. This also means that a higher level competitor can beat a lower level one, even with a handicap. Andy Murray could probably beat me left-handed. Lewis Hamilton could probably outrace me in a slower car. This also obviously applies to competitive video games. A major winning Ryu main is going to have a better any character than someone who can't place in the top 64. And for Melee, it's the same. Hell, even I could probably beat a lot of you watching this with any character on the roster. No, I don't have any bitches. Why do you ask? But this also is just kind of a common thing in Smash. When playing against someone worse, the better player will very often move over to a secondary, or even just any lower tier character on the roster to handicap themselves and make the games a bit more fun.
I take that! That counts! That counts as a win!
Because winning all the time can get boring. So what happens when that feeling plagues your everyday? You have become maybe a god of the game, and now everyone you grew playing is no match for you. So that makes you end up looking for any way to challenge yourself, to chase that excitement again. But what about the souls that you may crush on the way? Let me set the scene of my home continent of Europe and its place in the Melee scene. You see, Melee has never been as big over here as it is in America. This combined with smaller, interspersed scenes and a more different, laxed view on competing from the wider scene causes the overall level to be a little bit lower than America. Though it does mean we are way more fun. However, this does also mean that the continent produces less top-level talent, especially in the earlier days of Melee. But that doesn't mean there was no potential to do so. Players like ᵉᵘείμᵒ in the earliest days showed he could hang with the top dogs of America. And later, players like Prof, Ice, and Triff would also show their ability to hang with the best in America. All three getting ranked in the top 100 of players in the world at some point in their careers. But then there are the crown jewels of Europe, both hailing from Sweden. One a part of the notorious 5 gods of Melee, Armada, and the player who broke that same era, the Godslayer himself, Leffen. These two are so far above the others they may as well have been on another planet, only on extremely rare occasions falling down to Earth against another European. Now, I know you may forget, but let me remind you, before around 2020, netplay really wasn't anywhere near as popular as it is nowadays. And back then also wasn't very reliable connection-wise to not be laggy, and so a lot of people really didn't like netplaying to practice. This also made practice for the top of the top in Europe hard. While there were players other than themselves in other countries who they could practice against,
that's quite big.
It wasn't something that would happen all that often, meaning most practice would end up needing to be by themselves, or against players who were just substantially below you. Now, Leffen and Armada took to this crutch differently. While I'm sure both were less than happy to be having to travel 11 plus hours with a stop to get some solid practice, Armada seemed to be more than happy, I guess, to grind out his punish game against bots and play with his brother, and not really complain too much about it. But I mean, that might have just been his online character. I mean, who knows how he felt in private. Leffen, on the other hand, was very vocal in his displeasure in the seeming lack of motivation in Europe to get better, and has been known for a long time now in his vocal outbursts of frustration that his region sucks. He was clearly bored of the competition in Europe from a while back. For example, at Air 2 in 2015, he would enter with his secondaries for a little bit more of a challenge. Characters he'd played a lot in the past, like his Yoshi, but weren't quite up to the level of his Fox. To give you an idea of the extent of his craving for a challenge, this tournament wasn't small. It had a prize pot of roughly $1.7k, and Armada and Lucky had also travelled to enter. But I mean, he clearly just didn't care and wanted to play some Yoshi. And even that would get him to 5th place, just barely losing out to Android, and on his way taking out the UK's best player and love of my life, Professor Pro, with his Yoshi. And Prof, might I add, also went on to literally beat Hungrybox the month after this. However, it seems that even this level of challenge was too little for him within his home region, and that's when the Beast would be created. Half a year after Air 2, this video would appear on Leffen's YouTube. This is the first video I remember seeing of Leffen's Mewtwo. It was mesmerizing. As a relatively new player at the time, I had never seen a Mewtwo move and combo like that. I showed it to friends, bro, look at Leffen's Mewtwo. This shit's so cool. For those unaware, Mewtwo is ranked pretty low on the tier list. And while he shows some clear potential, he's extremely technical for a character that, while having some pretty strong tools, has fairly diminishing returns. He dies extremely early and has a hurt box the size of your mum. I remember trying Mewtwo and thinking, god damn, this guy just sucks. How on earth did Leffen even make him look good? But that infatuation with that clip has had me play the character throughout the years of my Melee career. And honestly, I still think the same way. But little did I know, my infatuation would soon turn to despair. The Mewtwo would surface for the first time at DreamHack Summer, 1 month later. But he would only use it to get through pools. However, he clearly thought that he could already win the bracket with his tertiary Mewtwo. His opinion of Europe clearly wasn't very high. And he did bring it out against Ice on FD for it to get a little smacked up. Only 3 months later though, at Air 3, he would go mostly all Mewtwo again. However, it would go mainly unnoticed, only getting some wins over some unranked players, mid-ranked players in EU regions, and actually Fuzzy, who after going 2-0 up against the Mewtwo decided to play secondaries for some reason, and lose. I don't know, it can be a weird tournament sometimes. The copious amounts of alcohol fumes can get to you, I guess. But in the end, Leffen would place 5th, but without really any insane wins. But the Mewtwo had clearly become a character he could get a challenge with, and had already given the lower ranks of Europe something to feel embarrassed about. Even if it was Leffen, losing to Mewtwo wouldn't feel good. And the threat of that low tier was looming ever closer to the upper echelon of Europe. The Mewtwo would then go dormant for half a year, irregularly appearing on streams to show Leffen wasn't done with the character, but that's when it happened. Phoenix Blue in February of 2018, Leffen would enter the bracket playing a mix of Mewtwo and Marth. This time he would storm his way through the bracket, making his way up the echelon of Europe. First was ᵉᵘείμᵒ. Then, after his Marth was knocked into losers, came Zork. Then he was up against Professor Pro, who in 2018 had such accolades as a win on one of the 5 gods, 4 years as #1 in the UK, top 6 in EU, and a top 50 on the world ranking. But Leffen would stick to Mewtwo, and, well...
Okay.
Oh la la!
Leffen!
While Prof would play some of the worst Melee I've seen from him in Game 1, I hate to say it, but he does get it together a bit more in Game 2, and still. Game 3, Prof is able to get it together, but Leffen has the FD counterpick, where Mewtwo's combo game is elevated, with solid combos off a grab opener.
So far, it's one of the best. It's an amazing tilt.
Oh la la! It's not done.
Wow,
it's not over. Oh my god! Oh my god! As I said earlier, as we said, just this is footsie, ladies and gentlemen. It's just footsies at that point.
Leffen defeats Professor Pro 3-1. The sadness that this set brought me, you don't even know, man. And Prof hasn't lived this down. I promise you, losing to a low tier, as we know in the modern day of Melee, is something that is just not forgotten. Prof would be the only high-profile victim at this event, but it was enough. Leffen had proven once again just how far above the EU field he was. It seemed, however, that this had satisfied him. After this 2018 bracket, we would only see the Mewtwo randomly at times where it felt appropriate. And so Leffen would go on to new ways to challenge himself. The Mewtwo seemingly laid to rest. After the release of Slippy and Rollback Netcode, we would truly begin to see new talent in Europe rise to higher heights over the course of 2020. We saw players like Frenzy, Solo Battle and Pipsqueak break out. Frenzy and Pipsqueak both collecting great wins abroad, especially so in Pipsqueak, who, I've even made a whole documentary on. He managed to beat the only 2 active 5 gods and win a large tournament in the US. So of course Leffen would compete against them, and for a moment probably felt a little bit refreshed. but eventually we would see the new ways he would seek the challenge. He would enter online brackets with Sheik to build up his secondary for Zayn's Marth. Sure, the Sheik would win in Europe, but we all know how good that Sheik is now, so I mean, that's not too much of a shock. He would then test himself on the box, and actually he would take some losses on his new controller. But in the end, he would catch up pretty quickly. None of these challenges seeming to truly last, and Leffen, feeling demotivated with Melee as a whole, wouldn't really play all that much within Europe, even with the new competition. That was until the release of Slippy's ranked mode, releasing a wave of hype for players to climb through the new ranks from the comfort of their own home. And of course, as a streamer, Leffen jumped at the opportunity. First of all, he got ranked 1 on his main account. Then, he climbed to the top with his account where he only played box. So what else was there for him to do? Just being on Europe as normal wasn't going to be interesting for him, nor his stream. Thus, the beast started to stir. He hopped onto his account, mewtwo, and started to run through Europe, taking sets off of all the best new up-and-comers out here grinding ranked, and just taking them all down with his Mewtwo, climbing his way up the ladder with 6 to 8 hour streams every day. His Mewtwo making a mockery of Europe, all while Leffen improves the character to heights the world had never seen before. Eventually, he reached the top with his other accounts. Mewtwo had beaten down Europe and allowed Leffen to the top of the charts with his moniker, EU is lazy. This was actually a cool incentive thing he tried to get people to play more. Leffen does genuinely try to get people out there to play, but it might just not be in the blood of the scene. I mean, these searches for a challenge they aren't malicious, just a way for him to cure his boredom. And unfortunately for Europe, he wasn't done yet. See, with Armada's retirement years ago, Leffen has been the undisputed god of Sweden for years now. The unquestionable rank 0, as he doesn't really go to any locals, but I mean everyone knows. But Sweden have been thriving in recent years. The rise of Pipsqueak and players like Sharp and Abe also showing themselves to be top 100 contenders as well. Europe does honestly seem like it's on an upward trajectory for some top class talent. However, that right now isn't enough for Leffen, whose final act to cure his boredom might be his most cruel. Stockholm recently got a new monthly called Smash It Space. Nice venue, a stream, and a lot of Sweden's top talent. Dady, Save State, a visiting Okami, Sharp, and Pipsqueak himself, all registered for the second iteration of the monthly. But who is that is also registered? That's right, it's mewtwo, here to see what it's all about. And after hours of hard grinding on Slippy, just how monstrous had this low tier become? Well, mewtwo tears through great players like Okami and Dady 3-0 to make it to winners finals, where he would have to face Pipsqueak, Europe's rising star, newly ranked in the top 20 of the world, confidently better than Ice was way back then. But then again, so is mewtwo. But I mean, it all looks fine. Pipsqueak takes the first 2 games, and even though it looked a little close in the second, that was FD. We can allow it. I'm sure he'll just clean up another one, and it'll be all done. Okay, well, as I said, it was FD. Look, I mean, this Yoshi's game is going fine. There is no way Leffen could win this one. Look at this lead Pipsqueak has built up. Wait, stop. Why is the music changing? Wait, no. Stop. Come on. Leffen's mewtwo defeats Pipsqueak in winners finals. And then, fresh off that loss, Pipsqueak plays Sharp and loses, not even allowing him the run back. And even in that matchup, Mewtwo runs through Sharp's Peach. Leffen's Mewtwo has once again pinned down the best Europe has to offer. Since this event, we haven't really seen the Mewtwo due to Leffen's seemingly dwindling interest in Melee. However, it won't soon be forgotten. The low tier runs that have single-handedly improved the public perception of Mewtwo as a character, and also tormented and disgraced a region. Honestly, at this point, I'm just convinced that Leffen has a mental control over the region, after having an insane edge from just dogging on us for so long. Because, I mean, it's not like Europe is bad. I mean, Triff's run at Battle of BC should prove that. It's just that Leffen is absolutely cracked out of his mind. I mean, it's not our fault that this guy is the one tormenting us. I mean, please, God, someone send help. This video is an SOS. I think he's outside right now. Please, someone come stop him. Please, someone come stop him.